Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take the information you give us and, well, turn it into knowledge you can actually use. Fast and hopefully fun.
Exactly. We cut through the noise for you.
And today, we are diving into the world of text-to-speech, or TTS. We've got a whole bunch of sources you sent over.
Yeah, it's a really interesting mix this time. We've got a how-to guide for building a simple TTS web app,
Okay.
and there's a Reddit discussion, lots of opinions there, mainly about ElevenLabs,
Mm-hmm.
a Geeks for Geeks page acknowledging contributors, someone on Reddit asking about building their own custom voice morphing AI.
Ambitious.
Definitely. Also, a comparison piece between Speechify and ElevenLabs, and even a YouTube interview with the CEO of ElevenLabs.
Wow, okay. So quite the spread. Our mission then for this deep dive is to kind of piece all this together. We want to understand where TTS is now, what it can do, its challenges, maybe where it's heading.
Right. Basically, your shortcut to getting up to speed on this whole field, because it moves fast.
It really does. So where do we start? The basics.
I think that makes sense. Let's look at that DEV community article first, the one about building a simple TTS web app.
Good idea. It kind of shows that, the core ideas aren't some kind of black magic.
Exactly. And what's neat is how it breaks it down.
Hmm.
It shows you how to build something that works, using just like standard web stuff. HTML for the page structure,
Right. The bones.
CSS to make it look decent,
Yeah.
and then vanilla JavaScript, just plain JavaScript to make it actually do stuff, like speak.
Yeah, they lay out the key parts pretty clearly. You've got the text box where you type, a drop-down menu to pick a voice, sliders for speed and pitch,
Rate and pitch, yeah.
and then the obvious buttons, speak, pause, stop. Super intuitive.
And technically, it relies on something called the Web Speech API that's built into many browsers.
Okay.
You've got window.speech synthesis, which is kind of the engine,
Got it.
and speech synthesis utterance, which is like the command you give it, the text, the voice settings, all that.
So even with this simple project, you're touching the core elements of TTS. Text in, sound out, with some controls. It definitely makes it less mysterious.
It really does. Okay, so that's the clean build-it-yourself view. Now let's jump into the maybe messier world of user experiences with that Reddit thread about ElevenLabs.
Ah, yes, the observations, feedback, opinions, questions thread. You always get the unfiltered stuff there.
Absolutely. And one thing that really comes through is how impressed people initially were with ElevenLabs, especially the instant voice cloning.
Yeah.
Yeah, one person said it made them dust off old projects from 2022 because the tech had improved so much. That's quite an endorsement.
That is significant, but it's never perfect, is it? I bet the thread had complaints too.
Oh, for sure. People were pretty open about the struggles, issues with getting accents right, sometimes a weird raspiness in the voice, and this interesting observation that voices could sometimes default to sounding like, quote, white English-speaking men.
Right, which points to the whole data bias issue in AI, doesn't it? Making sure the training data is diverse enough.
Exactly. It's a huge challenge to capture the full spectrum of human voices accurately.
And there's something else. Didn't someone say the voices could sound too good, like unnaturally perfect?
Yes, too perfect or too pristine, especially trying to make older voices sound old. They sometimes came out sounding younger, like the AI smooths out the wrinkles, so to speak.
Okay, that's interesting. It's like they haven't quite nailed all the natural imperfections yet.
Precisely. Realism is amazing now, but capturing that full human nuance is still, well, a work in progress.
What about controls? Did people want more knobs to twiddle?
Some did, yeah. They mentioned ElevenLabs has these main controls: stability and clarity similarity. Simple, which is good,
Bet.
but maybe not as deep as something like Resemble.ai, where you can supposedly tweak things more finely. Power users wanting more power, basically.
The classic trade-off. Ease of use versus granular control. Makes sense.
But the thread wasn't just about the tech itself. It was also amazing seeing the uses people found.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, helping people who've lost their voice, assisting blind users, writers using it to proofread their own work by listening.
Oh, that's clever. Catch errors by ear.
Yeah. And even things like calculating how long a script will take to read out loud. Really diverse applications.
That really shows the positive impact, doesn't it? Way beyond just, entertainment, accessibility, and productivity.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But there's always the question of cost.
Ah, yes. Was that an issue for ElevenLabs users?
It came up. Concerns about the pricing, the credit system. Some felt it could get expensive if you use it a lot.
Okay, which probably leads people to compare it with other options.
Exactly. The discussion mentioned others like Descript, Speechify, Murph AI, Sonantic, which Spotify bought, actually. People are weighing up quality, ease of use, API access for developers, and, yeah, cost.
And were there specific complaints, like beyond the accent thing?
Yeah, some specific stuff. Complex interfaces on some platforms, word limits being annoying, trouble cloning voices that weren't like standard English,
Mm.
that robotic sounds still creeping in sometimes, and even some negative experiences with customer support or getting refunds.
So it's not all smooth sailing across the board then. Good to get that realistic view.
Very valuable, yeah.
Yeah.
But it wasn't all negative. Users shared tips, too.
Oh, like workarounds.
Kind of, like using punctuation really carefully in ElevenLabs scripts
Mm-hmm.
to try and coax out more emotion or inflection.
Smart.
And even adding little hints in the text, like typing "I am sad" before a sentence to guide the AI's delivery.
Huh. That's creative. Users finding ways to work with the AI's current limit.
Exactly. Adapting.
Okay, so shifting from established platforms to something more aspirational. What about that Reddit post about building a custom voice morphing AI?
Right. This person wanted guidance on building their own system.
What was the goal exactly?
Basically, feed it text and a voice sample and have it output the text spoken in that specific voice.
Ah,
So, custom voice cloning from scratch.
wow. Okay, that sounds hard. What did the comments say?
Pretty much that. Like, yeah, it's possible they mentioned things like Tortoise TTS as examples of similar systems, but it's a major undertaking. Needs serious computing power, deep ML knowledge.
Yeah.
Definitely not a weekend project for a beginner.
So the advice was probably don't start there.
Pretty much. More like, look at using existing models like Tortoise. Or, maybe just use ElevenLabs if you need voice cloning, rather than trying to reinvent that very complex wheel yourself.
Right. Which actually leads us nicely into the next source, that Fahim AI article comparing Speechify and ElevenLabs head-to-head.
Perfect transition. Yeah, this gives us a more structured look at two big names.
And the quick summary, how did they stack up?
Okay, so ElevenLabs got a slightly higher rating, 9.0 versus 8.0 for Speechify.
But there's always a but.
But the starting paid plan for ElevenLabs was noted as being more expensive. So right away, it suggests maybe a quality versus cost trade-off.
How did the article position them? Like, who are they for?
It framed Speechify as more of a personal reading assistant. Think convenience, productivity, listening to articles or docs.
Okay, and ElevenLabs?
More for audiophiles. People who really care about top-tier realism, expressiveness in the voice.
Got it. So different target users, what about the pros and cons list?
For Speechify, the pros were definitely convenience and productivity boosting. Great for listening on the move. Cons were maybe the price, and some might want more voice variety.
And ElevenLabs? Pros.
Big pros were the realism and that voice cloning feature. Cons were potentially being a bit overwhelming at first, and those character limits on the free plan being restrictive for some.
Makes sense. Did they break down specific features like voice quality side by side?
They did. Voice quality. ElevenLabs generally seen as superior for that really lifelike sound. Speechify was described as good quality, totally fine for everyday listening tasks.
Okay, languages.
Speechify supported more languages overall at the time of the article. ElevenLabs had fewer, but was known for very high-quality English and was expanding, now up to 29 languages mentioned elsewhere.
And the custom voices?
Clear win for ElevenLabs there, since Speechify didn't offer voice cloning.
Ease of use.
Speechify generally seen as more user-friendly, maybe easier for beginners. ElevenLabs might have a steeper learning curve initially.
Accessibility.
Speechify was highlighted as being designed for accessibility. ElevenLabs, while producing high-quality audio useful for accessibility, wasn't primarily built with that focus.
And pricing, we touched on that. Speechify's annual cost was higher in that comparison, while ElevenLabs had a cheaper monthly starting point in that free tier, albeit limited.
Right. The article detailed the various ElevenLabs paid plans too. Starter, Creator, Pro, Scale with different character limits.
Any other key feature differences?
Yeah, Speechify's strength was noted as its browser and mobile integration. Very seamless for listening anywhere. ElevenLabs' big plus was its powerful API for developers.
So the final verdict from the article was?
Pretty much. Speechify if you prioritize affordability and ease of use for daily tasks. ElevenLabs if you need the absolute best voice quality and/or voice cloning. Depends on your needs.
That seems like a fair summary. Did the article mention any other alternatives?
It did, yeah. It listed a whole bunch for both, like Murph AI, Play.ht, Lovo, Descript, Well Said Labs. just highlighting that it's a crowded space with lots of different tools focusing on slightly different things.
Good context and the FAQs at the end. Anything crucial.
Just confirming that commercial use is generally okay. ElevenLabs does voice cloning, and Speechify is strong on accessibility. Pretty straightforward.
Okay, so we've heard from users, compared platforms. Now let's get the view from the inside. That YouTube interview with Matti Stanishevsky, the CEO of ElevenLabs.
Yeah, this was fascinating, hearing directly from the co-founder.
What were some key takeaways? Their growth sounded pretty explosive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Millions of users. They mentioned generating like 1,000 years of audio, used by over half the Fortune 500. Plus that recent big funding round. They're clearly doing something right.
What was the origin story? Why did they start it?
It actually came from frustration with bad dubbing. Specifically, Polish movies dubbed into English. He felt the quality was just lacking.
Huh. A personal pet peeve turned into a unicorn company. Love it.
Right. He talked about their initial approach to dubbing it was complex. Speech to text, then translation, then text to speech.
Lots of steps.
And challenges at each step. Getting speaker timing right, translating emotion accurately, not just words, and early TTS models like Tortoise being maybe a bit unstable.
So they started focused on dubbing.
Initially, yeah. But they quickly realized the demand for just really good TTS and voice cloning was much broader, so they pivoted, or rather expanded their focus.
Smart move. What did he say about their core tech innovations?
A big one was improving context understanding in the TTS. That's key for getting emotion and intonation right. And their approach to voice cloning, letting the AI figure out the voice characteristics itself from the audio, instead of engineers trying to define features manually. More data-driven.
Interesting. Did he mention the models they use?
He mentioned their early models were surprisingly small parameter-wise for the quality they got, and they were early adopters of things like transformers and diffusion models for audio, which are now pretty standard but weren't back then.
So they're constantly evolving.
Definitely. They're even releasing their own speech-to-text model now to get better speaker diarization and timestamps, basically solving problems they encountered earlier with other tools.
Building the whole stack. What about future directions?
He talked about balancing incremental improvements with bigger research leaps. A big focus now is on multi-modal approaches,
Meaning?
combining language models like LLMs with audio AI to create a sort of voice 2.0, better emotion understanding, better dubbing, more interactivity, basically AI that gets both text and sound deeply.
Okay, that sounds powerful. Anything on how the company itself runs?
Yeah, he mentioned small, independent teams, no titles philosophy, trying to keep things flat and agile, foster ownership. Seems quite modern.
And what's he excited about looking forward?
The potential of LLMs and multimodal AI, especially for things like personalized education that remembers context over your whole life, big picture stuff. Oh, and he mentioned giving a gift of appreciation to early users, which is a nice touch.
Cool. Okay, nearly there. We also had those couple of guides, one from Speechify about ElevenLabs and a voice flow tutorial. Did they add much new?
They mostly reinforce what we've heard, really solidifying ElevenLabs' reputation.
Yep.
The Speechify guide calls them a pioneering force.
By plays from a competitor, sort of.
Right. It summarizes how their AI works. Deep learning, NLP, trained on huge data sets to get that realistic sound from text or audio samples.
And it repeats the key features.
Yep. Big voice library, custom voice creation, multilingual support, 29 languages mentioned there, fast generation, detailed settings, AI dubbing, all the hits.
Pricing, too.
Confirms the flexible plans, including the free tier with 10,000 characters and 3 custom voices. And it lists those diverse use cases again. Podcasts, YouTube, audiobooks, e-learning, games, training.
Okay, and user reviews mentioned there.
Generally positive, 45 stars, praising the interface, quality features, but also acknowledging some cons, echoing the Reddit feedback.
And the voice flow tutorial. Similar story.
Pretty similar. Highlights ElevenLabs mission-making content accessible across languages and voices. Confirms the 2022 founding, the million-plus users milestone.
Any unique features mentioned there?
It specifically calls out the movie dubbing tool, the voice library marketplace where you can create and maybe sell voice clones.
Oh, interesting. Monetizing voices.
Yeah. Also the mobile app reader, expanded AI dubbing that tries to keep the original emotion, and something called voice transformation.
And for developers.
Emphasizes the API is easy to use, fast, like 400 meters response time, support common languages like Python, JavaScript. Confirms the big funding, $101 million total, the unicorn status.
Free plan mentioned again.
Yep, free and paid plans available. It also mentions using SSML tags, specifically break, to add pauses manually,
Useful detail.
and it positions VoiceFlow itself as maybe an easier way to build voice assistants than coding directly against the ElevenLabs API.
Makes sense for their own tutorial. Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've gone through a lot, from building blocks to user rants and raves, comparisons, CEO insights. What are the big takeaways?
Well, at first, just the sheer pace of evolution is staggering, right?
Mm-hmm.
From basic web APIs to AI that clones voices with nuance, it's moved incredibly fast.
Definitely. And we got a real sense of the user experience. The good, the bad, the workarounds. Platforms like ElevenLabs and Speechify are powerful, but people have definite opinions and pain points.
Right. We also saw that ambition to push things further, like custom voice morphing, even if it's complex.
Yeah.
And hearing the CEO's vision, the
Yeah.
focus on context, multimodality, it shows where the frontier might be heading.
So it's a super dynamic field. Constant improvements in quality, more languages, more user control. It's not standing still.
Not at all. Which kind of leads to a final thought, maybe for you, the listener.
Go on.
As this AI voice tech gets better and better, maybe even indistinguishable from human voices,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean? What new possibilities open up for creating things, listening to things, interacting? And crucially, what are the ethical things we need to think about?
Yeah, that's a big one. As the lines blur between real and synthetic voices, what happens next? Definitely something to chew on.